All right, everyone, welcome to the webinar, the Lux Foresight Report, Implications and Innovations in a Post-COVID World. My name is Michael Holman. I'm a VP for Manufacturing and Materials here at Lux Research, and I'm moderating today's session, which is going to be led by my colleague, Kevin Pang, Vice President here and the lead author of our latest Foresight Report. There'll be time for questions at the end, so at any point during the presentation, type any questions you have into the questions box on the screen. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for in the session, but if your question does not get answered, please feel free to email questions@luxresearchinc.com and we'll follow up with you. So with that, let's hand things over to Kevin and jump into the presentation.
Hey, thanks, Mike, and thanks everyone for attending today. We're very excited to be here to talk to you about some of our thoughts, our insights, and our predictions for 2022, given that we are emerging, hopefully, out of a post-COVID world. One of the things I wanted to walk through today, of course, is our approach and methodology in brief, to showcase some of the ways that we think about the analysis of markets and technologies and their relations to one another. One of the things I asked a lot of our thought leaders in-house is their views on 2021. What did we learn? How does that impact our thinking in 2022? And then how does that impact our vision for 2030 and beyond? And out of those dialogues and that analysis comes some of the top technologies to watch for in 2022, a few of which I'll showcase for you today. And we'll take a few example technology dives. And then again, coming back to the things that we learned in 2021, of course, all of the things that we've done before that, what are our predictions for 2022? And I've asked our thought leaders and research leaders to give me both the bad and the good here. And then I wanted to end with what I call the $10 million question. All right, so for those of you who are not familiar with Lux, which I guess is almost all of you, we have been around for almost 20 years now. We have hundreds of clients in what I consider to be the Innovation 1000 type of clients, but that also includes investors and governments. And we are the leading innovation intelligence company that provides both a wide range of products and services to address the needs of a lot of these clients that we have who are seeking innovation to deliver new technologies, new products into existing and new markets. In order to do that, we have a global footprint. We have offices in Boston, New York, Amsterdam, Singapore, and Tokyo, and that allows us to both service our clients as well as to spot innovation and to interact with innovation ecosystems in each of these areas around the globe. We cover a wide range of different technologies and markets, but we are organized in the following ways. These three pillars that you see here: climate tech, circular tech, future consumer tech. Why? In part in response to the needs of our clients, but also the challenge of sustainability. Sustainability requires systems-based thinking. It requires platform-based innovation and solutions. And so as you kind of look at the focus areas, you'll see here, all of these are basically platforms for solutions, and that requires integration of a wide range of different technologies. And so this is our Lux Sustainable Innovation Model, and this is what we are taking to market for our clients. And we believe that this is going to be very useful for you as well, should you choose to become Lux clients, which I hope you will. All right, so let me talk a little bit about the approach we took to generating this Foresight report. Now, within Lux, we have what I estimate to be close to 200 years of collective experience in assessing markets and analyzing technologies. So this approach, I call this a modified Delphi approach. Now, for those of you who might remember your Greek history, in ancient Greece, people would often trek to Mount Parnassus to consult the oracle at Delphi to try to see into the future so they could take appropriate action today. Now, the Delphi method was made popular by the Rand Corporation in the 1950s. And the question that they asked is, what is the impact of technology on strategic thinking? The strategic thinking at that point was centered around, of course, the Cold War and the arms race. But today, given that we're in a post-COVID world, again, hopefully, My question to my colleagues was, what is the impact of technology on strategic innovation thinking? Okay, so we start with the interviews of our internal experts. These are our vice presidents and group directors that are interacting with a lot of our clients, attending conferences, overseeing broad swaths of research at Lux, and building our network of innovation around the globe. And I asked them many questions, one of which was, give me a long list of candidate technologies. And so you'll see that we came up with about 30 some odd technologies here, and also a lot of insights and predictions and recommendations, some of which I'll share with you today. But we took that input and then we went into the Lux database. We have things like tech pages. We have profiles where we interview CEOs and CTOs of startups. We have research reports. We have frameworks and models. And so we use, and of course, news commentaries. And so we're using that to kind of gauge momentum and mass, right? And then on the upper part here, you'll see I took two variables. In this particular case, patent and publications, and we combined them together in our analysis. And then we fed that into a second group of independent experts within Lux, our research directors that are really doing a lot of the ground level research here. And after a couple of turns of the crank, on the right-hand side here, you see our output in our report. So A, a short list of technologies. B, emerging platforms, which represent new and emerging markets and ecosystems. Third, our insights about those emerging markets. And then, of course, 2022 predictions. And then, as I mentioned, our $10 million question. Okay. So there's a lot of text here, which we won't spend a lot of time reading, but if you follow me, I'll move from left to right, top to bottom, right? So the first, in climate tech, one of the observations in 2021 is that carbon is transitioning from a nuisance to be dealt with, a thing to be regulated, to an actual market. So we see a game-changing step taken by, for example, a company like ExxonMobil, who is actually saying carbon can actually be monetized. It can become its own market, its own innovation ecosystem. And this is, I think, a game-changing mind shift here. And we're actually starting to see the beginnings of fast followers in other parts of the globe. So we say that this is actually a very exciting and new area to monitor going forward, with very large implications for the future. If we look at circular tech, the name of the game, I think, is digital transformation. We've been talking to a lot of our clients over the last number of years on the impact of digital transformation on traditional industries like materials and chemicals, which traditionally function on a tanker car load basis, right, to execute their business model. But in digital sales platforms, which are a manifestation of digital transformation, we're seeing just in time, just in context delivery of molecules. And what digital transformation means in this context is doing a lot more with a lot less. So a fundamental challenge to a core business model that's been in existence for a very long time. When you see companies like BASF embrace this, we think that this also is a signal. When we turn our attention to future consumer tech, one of the surprises came at the very end of 2020 in December, when the government of Singapore, contrary to many expectations of many experts in the market, approved the first use of cellular agriculture in generating lab-grown meat. And what we're seeing as an effect of that in 2021 is a lot of governments around the world racing to create regulations and policies around this new market. And we're seeing hundreds of millions of dollars of venture capital flowing in a wide range of different countries and regions around the world to try to copy and replicate what is going on in Singapore. Digital tech. While the COVID pandemic was initially a challenge to supply chains in this particular respect, many of our CPG clients actually found it to be a boon, because it allowed them at the end to be able to build a direct bridge to the consumer, driving yet another nail into the brick and mortar model. They now see brick and mortar as yet a hurdle to them getting to their consumers. They're seeing that they, with direct to consumer deliveries, they can generate a lot more data about the packaging, about the product, and about the interactions of the consumer with both. I'll say one thing about signposts and signals. Again, you can look at this in our report. I'll point your attention to the UK announcing a 2023 experiment. We expect that in 2022, there'll be an announcement. The UK has been preparing for a while to hijack their existing liquid natural gas infrastructure to take advantage of the anticipated green hydrogen coming out of the decarbonization efforts happening in the North Sea. So again, a connection of ecosystems to create new markets and new opportunities. So these signposts and signals are really things that we will be looking for and watching and measuring and monitoring in 2022 to advise our clients on trajectory, trend, and velocity. All right, so the technologies. The outer ring represents the 30 some odd technologies, which we don't actually have time to get into, but all of these are very important from what the perspective of our thought leaders and research directors to monitor and study and perhaps take advantage of in 2022 in the context of 2030, right? But what you see in the inner bullseye here are our top 10 technologies that through this analysis, our momentum analysis, our patent analysis, our publication, all of the things that we're looking at are the things that we are emphasizing are the top 10 for us. So in clean energy technologies, it's going to be flow batteries, compressed air, energy storage, high temperature heat pumps. In digital, it's biomarkers and ultra wideband sensing. In circular technologies, it's advanced pyrolysis and electrochemistry. And for future consumer, it's self-reproduction, cell-based meat, and novel seed treatment. We don't have time to go through all of these. I'll give you some example deep dive and a select few, but I'll say a few things here. One is when it comes to clean tech, it's really about green, right? It's about connecting the grid from generation to distribution to usage and back again, because we expect to see a very dynamic and smart grid emerge in the future. In circular technologies, it's two things. One is how do we actually design new materials to create sustainability and recyclability in mind? But what you see here today is the recycling the old, the new technologies that need to advance in order for us to actually have a viable circular economy with full recyclability. In digital technologies, it's really data about everything. As one innovation leader and one of our clients mentioned to us, if you can measure it, you can monetize it. And so we anticipate a lot more edge-based computing, a lot more data sharing, and a lot more digital types of technologies in that respect. In future consumer technologies, all of sustainability really is being driven by the empowered consumer, and there's more and more of them, which is a good thing. But what they're expecting is a better world with better for you products. And so we see a lot of these things happening in this particular sphere. Okay, so let me walk you through a few examples of the things that we looked at, okay? Very briefly, what you're looking at here is the output of the Lux AI engine, which is an internal tool that we use. It pulls a lot of different data together, two of which I used for our analysis today, patent and publications. But it's basically a set of arbitrary 10-year area under curve analysis, all right? So we also looked at a lot of different things in our database and outside of that. We looked at deal momentum, we looked at partnerships, we looked at ecosystems, we looked at the players that are emerging in this new space. And of course, we have our eponymous Lux take. And one of the things that I think is really quite interesting is the advancements of heat pumps after a very long time. And we're seeing beginnings, as you see here in this bullet here, some significant advances in that technology. We're also seeing new types of business ecosystems. For example, data centers packaging their heat and shipping it out as a product to be sold to surrounding businesses. So we see heat as a monetizable market and a solution for a lot of clients. Advanced pyrolysis. Well, there's intense interest here, and it has been for a while. It's actually increasing because of the need for recyclability and for greater economic viability for this. But it's also an example of integration of platforms. So in order for advanced pyrolysis to really work, we need a lot of upstream activity. So we need robotics, we need machine vision to be able to sort the plastics. We need new types of filtration and capture mechanisms, and then we need delivery into market. And in fact, we see CPG clients asking us about post-consumer recyclable plastic that can be incorporated into their products. So again, the evolution of a new type of ecosystem and market, which is bringing a lot of interesting players and technologies into the mix. Novel seed treatments. I think this is important because relative to my earlier comments about digital sales platforms, everything is about doing more with less. So for example, there may be some of us today that remember crop planes, dropping tons of materials on per acre basis, right? In order to actually grow crops. But today, the new paradigm is we're going to be doing soil analysis. We're going to be doing diagnostics. We're going to be doing precision agriculture. We're going to wrap the chemistry that we need around the seed itself and sustained release formulations so that you can obviate the need for these things. And again, this is just being driven by sustainability concerns and runoffs, right? So we see a lot of large players embracing this. We see a lot of partnerships and cross-licensing deals to create that chemical platform, plus the analytics, plus the data, plus the diagnostics and the precision. Ultra-wideband sensors are our last example for today. A few years ago, people were wondering why Apple would put an ultra-wideband sensor in its Apple Watches, and now it's become quite obvious because it's going to be the hub for a connected ecosystem of devices that's going to measure many things in relation to the wearer, right? So we see acceleration of this because, for example, in bullet 2, people are actually using this to monitor the location of employees and also whether they were keeping 6 feet apart or not. But we're now starting to see this being applied to every asset in the manufacturing space. So we see this as an add-on and an accelerant to Industry 4.0. So we see this becoming a very ubiquitous technology that's going to impact both the consumer as well as the manufacturing side of our economy. Now, you may recall I mentioned that in my dialogues with our thought leaders, I asked them for their predictions. We don't have time to go through all of them today. There's quite a few here, but I will, for the purpose of illustration, maybe point out a couple of them. One that struck me as very interesting as a result of our dialogues is the assertion from Dr. Sriram Ramanathan, who heads up our digital team, that proprietary data is dead. It's increasingly hard to defend and not worthwhile because economies and markets and competition are moving so much faster. But the thing that I think is really interesting to build on top of that came out of our dialogue is that data becomes more valuable when it's added to other data, disparate data, to create new patterns of information that can be unlocked for insights into markets. So companies, we believe, that will win in this particular sphere of competition will be those that actually have good data management, good data governance, and have found ways to unlock the value of that data by sharing it with others in unconventional ways. A second one that I'll point out here is his assertion that insurance and actuarial companies actually emerge as winning sectors. Why? It's because they're so good at data wrangling, right? That's core to their business. I'll give you one example. I had a recent conversation with Munich Re, who basically started a new insurance division to insure AI providers. And their logic is simple, that they have been insuring against the operations for many of large companies for many years. And so any incremental increase or improvement because of increase and improvement because of AI and software can be measured. And if it can be measured, it can be rewarded. So just another example of an unconventional player moving into the space. I think one other thing that I'll point out that I think is relatively important is edge computing. It's been around for a while, but we believe that we've reached a tipping point because of some of the comments I made earlier with respect to direct to consumer, but also as we look at ultra wideband sensing, we look at automation, we look at Industry 4.0, we see this accelerating quite a bit in 2022. Okay, the $10 million question. Again, we don't have that much time to go through all of these. I invite you to become clients of Lux so that you can interact with our thought leaders and analysts, and they can walk you through their thinking. But my question to each of them was, both from a long-term and short-term investment perspective. And again, what's driving this question is that a lot of our clients are leaders in R&D, corporate venture capital, corporate development, innovation, right? And they're always looking for new ways to put money to work, whether it's internal or with partnerships externally. So take a look at this and come back to us with questions. So let me summarize my key takeaways here. Number one, that sustainability is really about systems-based thinking. It's about platform solutions. It's about integrating lots of technologies to really focus on a particular problem in sustainability. And one of the surprising things that comes out of that is that even technologies that in and of themselves as standalone technologies that might not be economically attractive in this new systems way of thinking, platform-based solutions actually become viable. The second is that sustainability is so top of mind for everybody that regulations and policies are really going to drive the evolution of markets, and it's going to be different by region. So if you're in technology scouting, you're going to have to start looking at regional policies and regulations and market dynamics in order to actually know where to successfully apply your innovation and ideas. And finally, I think what should be clear from all of this is that moving forward, having a robust vision of the future, whether it be for 2030 or 2050, is really important. So you need to be building that technology roadmap and vision now. And with that, let me say thank you for your time and attention today, and we'll take questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Kevin. And we do have a few questions coming in here to address. One of the ones I thought maybe could be good to start off with is a little bit of a general one. You've kind of highlighted the sort of the 10-year outlook here for a lot of these projections, but you know, do we also have views on, does Lux also have views on the, you know, the kind of the longer term 2035 or 2050 approach as well, or outlook as well?
Sure. Yeah, one of the things that you'll find in the report is our discussion on platforms and systems. And one of those things is the hydrogen economy. There's a lot of excitement today about it, but as you might imagine, it's rather a large transition and transformation. So a lot of our clients are asking, how can we build an effective roadmap through 2050, which we have done with them and for them. So the thing that I challenged our thought leaders and research directors to really think about in the context of our Foresight report is thinking about 2050, let's break it down to 2030, and then let's drive it all the way back to 2022 so that we can actually have actionable recommendations for our clients. But that having that 30-year roadmap in mind is really very important, especially for very large transformation in things like circular economy and green energy.
Yeah. There's also a question on, you know, advanced pyrolysis. How do we see the advanced pyrolysis starting to impact the landscape of plastic waste recycling, potentially increasing recycling rates for some materials?
Well, I'll start, Mike, but I'll turn it back to you because you're our expert.
Yeah.
The thing that I'm excited about it is that and when I talk to our CPG clients, they feel that they have ownership of this because they own the brand.
Yeah.
So they're not going to sit back and simply let things happen. And so they are very involved. And so again, this comes back to this new ecosystem, new partnerships that are evolving that we're seeing. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the reason we called out advanced pyrolysis specifically, right, is that this is referred to or it kind of falls under the umbrella of what people talk about as chemical recycling, right, where you can actually take plastic waste and break it all the way down to essentially a base oil that you can then, you know, feed back into your refinery and make virgin quality chemicals or potentially fuels or whatever else you would make in a refinery. So it's very attractive for that reason, but the kind of conventional pyrolysis processes, you know, the oil that you produce from pyrolysis today is really not a very high quality. It needs to be upgraded pretty significantly. That takes a lot more energy, you know, before it can be used to make good chemical and material products in particular. So that takes a lot more energy, it takes a lot more cost, and it really mitigates the both the economic and the environmental benefits of doing this type of chemical recycling. So we've been following these kind of advanced or catalytic type of pyrolysis technologies that can provide a higher quality, go more direct and higher quality route to chemical products. So that's going to be, I think, a promising area to follow, but it is still going to be, as I think you alluded to when we presented this during the webinar, very dependent upon getting access to good waste streams of appropriate types of waste plastic, because you can't feed just, it could take some plastics that are not readily recycled otherwise, but you can't just feed any old mixed plastic waste stream into it. You do still need to have the right sort of mix. So it is going to really require those new ecosystems to be built out around the collection and the infrastructure and all of that.
Yeah, let me fold that back into your first question about a 30-year view. So if you recall, I mentioned the need for solving today's problems with the materials that we have today. Advanced pyrolysis is definitely a key contender in the solution space, right? And you can think of that as the first half of the next 30 years. But what also needs to happen for us to have a truly circular economy with new products and services coming to the market is a redesigned think of beginning with the end in mind, where a product, a material, a solution is actually sustainable and recyclable from the design phase, right? And that's the actual exciting part of that second part of the next 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think those two things are very much in kind of playing off each other, right? I mean, you have people that are trying to go to mono-material packaging, for like plastic pouches or toothpaste tubes or what have you, right? So that it can be recyclable, but you still need a better process. Even though those designs are in principle recyclable, you still need a better process like an advanced pyrolysis in order to actually be able to economically recycle them.
Exactly.
So we have time for one last question. You mentioned telemedicine is something that's being rolled back despite the kind of trend, the traction that it's gotten during the pandemic and quarantines and all. But we see digital biomarkers rising up. So can you talk a little bit about the rationale behind that and what you see the impact of as being?
Sure. Well, because of COVID, actually, I think there was a punctuated equilibrium, if you will, where there was a race to actually put telemedicine into place for all very good reasons. But as the pandemic becomes endemic, I think demographics will sort itself out. There'll be this advance in technology and capabilities. The pipelines will be built. And importantly, the back end in terms of billing and all of these things that creates that full cycle loop for a necessary market has now been built. And now in the endemic phase, of course, consumers/patients will have a choice whether they prefer face-to-face or remote mobile. So we see a transient decrease in telemedicine, but the technology is already in place, the pipes are there. And if you think about the graying population, what some people call the gray tsunami that's coming, and the rising healthcare across the globe, it's going to resurge. And so we're very excited about that. And in order for that to work, biomarkers have to be there so that they are proxies that patients/consumers can interact with their healthcare providers in a meaningful way, and hopefully in a non-invasive way, right? So I think we're following that space quite carefully and excitedly.
Great. All right. Well, thanks, Kevin, for the time, the presentation, the questions and discussion here. That will conclude the webinar for today. We will share the slide presentation and recording from the webinar to all the attendees. You should get an email from us later on today. And after you leave, we will get a prompt for a survey about the presentation today. So if you can give us any feedback that you have there, it'd be very much appreciated. It really helps us to refine and improve for future webinars. So thank you to all of you for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you.